This is without doubt one of the most educated, sophisticated, committed bunch of people that I know here in Washington, D.C. So Bruce Shahbaz is going to spend the next hour and 15 minutes talking about why our nation has to make a commitment to maintain suicide prevention and access to mental health care for our service members, our veterans, and their families, a national priority for the next 50 to 100 years, correct? So, Bruce, take it away, my friend. There's bottles of water for you guys. And we're going to have roughly 55 minutes, I guess, of conversation, and then there'll be 20 minutes of Q&A. And then the Ohio people, Akron, Ohio, where are you? Okay, we want you to meet Barbara Van Dalen very quickly so she can talk about the Change Direction program that they want to do in Ohio next month. Okay, so take it away.
Hi, good morning. By way of introduction, what I've done is I've asked everybody to do a 3-sentence introduction. Much like was asked of you last night, I figured the best thing for us to do was to model that behavior for you. So here's my sentences. I'm Bruce. I'm an Army medic who served as a soldier, supporting soldiers and their families for 20 years. I've worked on wounded warrior care, suicide prevention, and mental health issues for about the last 7 years. And I want to help our nation honor its commitment to those who have defended it from all enemies, foreign and domestic. There's my 3 sentences.
Right.
Next, Jackie will go.
Thank you. I'm Jakie Maffucci. I am a neuroscientist by training and the research director for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. I'm here today and every day really because I have such a strong passion for these issues and for talking about these issues in a data-driven way. And now I get the privilege of also representing IAVA's members in really bringing awareness and solutions to the conversation around suicide prevention.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Thompson. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I've spent the last 10 years working on veteran suicide prevention. I currently oversee the Veteran Suicide Prevention Program for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I am here because I wake up every morning knowing that I am working towards making sure that our veterans remain safe, to make sure that they are living the most high quality lives they can. And I can't think of a better mission or reason to wake up in the morning. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Barbara Van Dalen. I'm also a clinical psychologist. I'm the president and founder of Give an Hour. For the last 11 years, we've been providing free mental health care to those who serve their families in the communities, over 185,000 hours of free care. And I'm here today because mental health is not just a military or veteran issue, but if we are ever going to ensure that those who serve and their families receive the care that they need and deserve, we have to change the culture of mental health in America. And by doing that, we assist all of those who are in need. But for this particular panel, we also assure that the men and women who serve and their families are comfortable seeking the care that they deserve.
Hi, I'm Mark Graham. I am not a clinician. I am an Army guy who retired after 34 and a half years of the Army. I'm here because I have a passion for suicide prevention and for service members and their families and our great veterans. My wife and I lost 2 sons, one to suicide and one serving in Iraq. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. I run a program called Vets for Warriors out of Rutgers University. And it's a very collaborative program. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week peer support line. It's confidential. You can trust when you call, the phone's going to get picked up live by a veteran anytime, day or night. Those veterans are from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. And we have male and female veterans, and they're from every era, from Vietnam all the way to Iraq and Afghanistan. So anyone can call, whether you're serving today or whether you've ever served our nation. You can call and talk to someone confidentially about what you're going through and to get in front of suicide and to help people before they have to call because they're in crisis. Let's help them early on and connect them back to the communities in which they live.
Good morning. My name is Bill Rausch from Ohio. I'm not good at following the 3-sentence rule. I'm an Army veteran. I spent over 10 years in the United States Army. I'm a Iraq War combat veteran, and I'm the executive director of Got Your Six, which is a phrase in the military that means I've got your back. And so for me, I think there's no better phrase to really describe what we're here to talk about today. And the reason I'm here is because I'm also equally passionate about suicide prevention and a community-based approach to empower our veterans to strengthen our communities. And so for me, I've lost my oldest sister to suicide who didn't serve in the military, and have lost one too many friends in the United States military to suicide. And so it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you to John and AFSP for the opportunity, and from there I'll kick it back over.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate everyone keeping it short, giving an opportunity to model that behavior. First off, I think I need to provide a disclaimer. When I worked on the Army Suicide Prevention Task Force, I relied on all of these panel members to help me significantly. So I'm not exactly a disinterested or non-biased panel member. I, in fact, owe my understanding of these issues to all of these folks here. They generously educated me over the last 7 years. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about what is the problem? What is it we're facing? So Veterans Affairs estimates this year, there are 21.3 million veterans in our country. Almost 700,000 of those are World War II era veterans. We've got 1.5 million Korean War veterans, 7 million Vietnam era veterans, and 3 million post 9/11 veterans. So what does that mean? We're trying to develop programs that address the ages from 90 to 18. Male, female, from all walks of life throughout the country. It is a leading cause of death within the military. For the last several years, suicide has been, there have been more suicide deaths than there have been deaths in combat. And for the Army, the rate doubled over about a 4-year period shortly after 9/11. 1 in 5 suicide deaths across the country are veteran or service members. And so when I've been on the Hill talking to people and they say, well, what is the problem? What's the issue? What's causing this? What do we need to fix? I say, well, it's really rather easy. It's mental health issues, it's moral injuries, it's seen injuries, it's unseen injuries, it's post-traumatic stress, it's substance abuse, it's traumatic brain injuries, it's physical injuries, military sexual trauma, and the integration of those care and services across all of those product lines. So that's the problem. Really pretty simple fixes associated with those things. A recent report released by the Armed Forces for last year, mental health, illness, and injuries and poisonings, which is a category that the military uses to identify accidental overdoses, perhaps suicide attempts, drug overdoses, and injuries that may have been suicide attempts. Those two major categories accounted for 55% of the military's hospital bed days. So 55% of all the bed days in the military last year were dedicated to those two categories, and 2/5 of all the medical encounters were associated to those two major categories. So that's the population that's currently serving and the workload associated with that. And everybody in that population will eventually transition on and become a veteran. And so those issues then move on into another healthcare system. So we'll start with the first question to Caitlin. Why is an all-hands-on-deck approach, and see, I'm an Army guy, but I use Navy terms. See, I'm very multi-service. Why is an all-hands-on-deck response necessary?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Bruce. And I think that one thing that I want to make sure we're aware of, especially as you're talking about the population numbers and war era, is that we need to remember that 70% of all veteran deaths by suicide are those veterans who are 50 years old and older. So we make a lot of, we hear the narrative all the time about our youngest veterans, as we should, because we're also very concerned because youngest veterans, especially between 18 and 26 years old, those rates are going up at a pretty dramatic rate, increase at this point. But we also still need to step back and really remember our older veterans. So that's one piece that I just want to put out there from the beginning. Another thing that I want to just briefly touch on is our women veterans. We are also finding increasing rates of suicide among our women veterans, which we're very, very concerned about. So why is an all-hands-on-deck approach needed? So what do we know about VA? We know that VA actually has the largest integrated suicide prevention program in the country, meaning that with all of the electronic records, with the fact that VA has this kind of overall national helm with all of the VA hospitals around the country, we're able to make policy for those veterans that use VA care. So what else do we know? We know that most veterans who die by suicide have never touched VA care. So how could this not be an all-hands-on-deck approach? And that's for a variety of reasons. It may be because they choose not to use VA care. Absolutely fine. And with that, we then need to make sure that our community providers, that we are engaged with others within the community, that our VSOs and others are aware of what we're doing so that we can both help to inform what they do, but they can also help to inform what we do, because we're all in this together. We have really developed, and we're working to develop, and we're going to continue to really develop strong partnerships with everyone here on this panel, as well as others, including AFSP. I'm just always so thrilled to be among all of you, because you are our strongest, some of our strongest advocates for veteran suicide and suicide in general. And so we just need to keep talking and need to work together on this issue, all hands on deck.
Great. Barbara, why does the government need help in providing care? VA's got the largest healthcare system. What's needed from the public sector?
Why do we need to exist? Well, first of all, thank you, Bruce, for hosting and setting the stage so well, and thank you to John and Bob for inviting all of us, and to my other colleagues on this panel. What's really great about this is that we all know each other really well. It's unusual for me anyway, to be on a panel with everyone that I really feel such tremendous respect and gratitude for the work that everyone here does. We need to work together, as Caitlin said, and the good news is, and especially for all of you who are going out to the Hill, things have changed dramatically in the last several years. That doesn't mean we don't need to do more in terms of partnerships with the VA, but I'll speak just for our organization. We are really now breaking ground in some amazing ways to coordinate, to collaborate with the VA. Why? Because the VA isn't everywhere, and it can't be everywhere. And even if it was in more places, it still wouldn't be everywhere. So organizations like Give an Hour, where we have 7,000 providers all throughout the country, we work very closely with all of these groups, and the way we work closely with our VA partners now, and again, this has changed. So when you're out there talking to congressmen and senators, make sure that you underscore, we're glad that things have changed, and we want you on the Hill to support more change. And if that means funding, great. If that means opening up your sort of way you think about partnerships, private and nonprofit and public, do that, because that's how we solve issues. It isn't possible for the VA to cover everyone. And from the beginning of Give an Hour, which was 11 years ago, I don't think that it is proper, personally. These men and women who served, my dad served, my uncle served, my nephew is serving. These are my family members. These are my friends. These are my coworkers. I want to be involved. And so the best way, we believe, is to make sure that we are forming those relationships and making sure that in every community, our providers are aware of what the VA has, and that the VA providers and the vet clinics and the larger hospitals, they know about Give an Hour, and that we work seamlessly. We're getting there, and it's a really exciting time.
Tremendously exciting, lots of accomplishments. General Graham, how do we get in front of this problem? How do we reduce the need for the crisis intervention, the diving catches that we have to make?
Thanks, Bruce. And again, like Barbara and Caitlin and everyone, thanks to John and Bob and to you, Bruce, for hosting this. And thanks to all of you for being here and what you do. And I know many of you in this room have been touched by suicide, which is why you're such strong advocates. So you know someone that's been touched by suicide. So we're thinking of you and all those young men and women who decided to raise their hand and serve our nation. And Caitlin brings up an excellent point about all the eras. One of the things you'll find at Vets for Warriors is important because there's a lot of organizations out there. We're one of them. You know, we're not the only one. We're one of many. But we offer something a little different, I think, that's important. And we need a crisis line. That's important. We talk to the crisis line back and forth with our call center. But what we have is, the idea is let's help people before they're in crisis. So many of those that call Vets for Warriors, remember, when you call Vets for Warriors 24 hours a day, a veteran answers the phone live. And there's also a licensed clinician on the call center floor at all times. So when you call and talk to somebody at Vets for Warriors, they'll talk to you about what you're going through. Oftentimes callers feel isolated. They feel like they're just being hit with a fire hydrant full of stressors. So the peers help them break down those stressors into garden hoses. What's the toughest thing you're going through today? And help them work through those issues. We don't solve your issues. We help work through those with you. We help connect you to other organizations that do great work. Give an Hour, Got Your Six, others, IAVA, other organizations who do wonderful work. But what really is amazing is the peer connection. So one of the things you'll see our taglines we have is discover the power of connection. And we think that's a real great segue into getting some of those to call into the VA system. Because some of them have been to the system, maybe didn't have a good experience, so we help them work their way through that. Try again, go back. They really do want to help you. Or some say, no way, they don't want to do that. Then we connect them through community-based care. Because it's all about community. Everyone lives in communities. So we want to connect them back. I know we've had callers that from all spectrums of the globe. You can imagine it's a national program, international, and you can do live chat, 8 social media sites. You can get a hold of us. But one of the things I think that's so important is to know is when the callers call, they trust the person that answers the phone because they too have served. All of our peers have transitioned. We had a caller recently call up who transitioned from the Army, went into college, was really struggling. Using the GI Bill, great thing. He's a veteran, but he was just struggling, and he just wanted somebody to talk to. He thought, God, am I the only one out here having rough times and having these thoughts? And the peer he talked to, it's a magical system, actually. I don't know how it works, but the phone system just seems to find the right peer when they call. And the peer he talked to happened to also be a college student. And, because all of our peers aren't full-time. They are paid, so we hire veterans to help those serving and those veterans that are out there. And so he called and they talked about it. And he said, hey, look, I felt the same way. You're a little older than the college-age students. It's tough. You don't get it. You don't seem like you fit in yet. You will. Just stay in there. So they talked. So one of the key powers of Vets for Warriors is we call you back. You call us, and then after that, we call you back. Hey, how's it going? Did you make that appointment? Did you get to go see somebody? Did you find somebody in the community? Did you get to an organization that you're running with or working with? And just have a conversation. And the average time we talk to somebody is between 4 and 14 times over a 5-6 month period. So we don't stay forever. They don't stay with us. The idea is let's help you through this time you're going through and get out there so you can thrive. I mean, most people go through a tough time sometime in their life, right? And so sometimes folks out there that have served are at a different point in their life and they have different stressors coming at them. So let's help them early on as soon as we can so they can get back out there. Another key piece to remember is Vets for Warriors is confidential. So when you call, we don't tell the military, we don't tell your employer or anything. And I was talking to Caitlin earlier, I was kind of surprised how many veterans are really concerned about the confidentiality because they don't want their employers to know. Because some people think, oh, you're a veteran, what's going to happen? Well, veterans are great employees, but they're worried about that confidentiality. So we offer that for them, and then we connect them back, and then we stay connected. So discover the power of connection by calling Vets for Warriors and helping to spread the word. One of the challenges we have is people that call us, it's confidential, right? So they're not out telling everybody else they called. You go to a great restaurant and you go, hey, I went to this great restaurant. But if you call Vets for Warriors, you're not very likely to tell other people you called because that's why you called. It's confidential. You don't want someone else to know maybe that you're struggling or having some rough times. So we need your help to get the word out so people know they can call us and we can help connect them to other organizations. We can help talk to them anytime, day or night, about what they're going through. Thanks. Oh, yeah, they got the cards, too. John's got the advertising. You got these cards here. And plus, you can go on the website and request materials anytime. So help us get the word out so we can help take care of folks early on.
Great, thank you very much. Bill, let's talk about the community's role. Why is it important for veterans to reintegrate into communities after they leave the military?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before I mention that, I just, everybody does have a personal connection to suicide in this room, as you mentioned, Mark. And mine came 10 years ago when I got the toughest phone call of my life from my father, who told me my oldest sister, Heather, had died by suicide. And I was deployed to Baghdad, Iraq, and I was in my hooch with Joe Quinn, one of my best buddies, who's Mark's son-in-law. And he wasn't his son-in-law, man. I gave Joe a big hug. I told him I loved him. He told me I loved me. And my colonel at the time, John Sims, who I care deeply about and works in the veteran space, gave me a big hug. And the community that's community. And for me, that was really what helped me through that very, very difficult time. And so when I think about the other traumatic experiences in my life in the military, now the military, the community is the one component of every aspect that Bruce mentioned that is helpful. And we know that, right? We know that there's a community component that's helpful regardless of what era a veteran served, regardless of whether you're a veteran or not. One of the challenges I think we have as a veteran and military community is as we promote veteran and military suicide challenges, mental health challenges, we often become the poster children of that problem. And so it's often thought that it is a veteran problem, not an American problem. And one of the amazing things about you all here today is you have that ability as you go up on the hill and you go back to your small towns and big cities, whether you're in Akron, Ohio or not. Everybody should move to Akron. You're able to give that a voice, and you get to say, hey, listen, this is a real problem. And then, oh, by the way, this is a problem that we can tackle together, right? Using a community-based approach. At Got Your Six, we believe that we can empower veterans to strengthen communities. And more specifically, what we've looked at is giving veterans a mission and a purpose again when they leave the military. And so we like to say now that we're empowering veterans to lead a resurgence of community across the nation. And the reason we say that is because we know there's a decline in community, not just brick and mortar, but based off of our research, we know folks don't know their neighbors. They don't volunteer, they don't vote. These are really, really critical core components of a healthy society. And so for us, it's really, really important. And we define success almost when the veteran, say for myself or Mark or anyone in the room today, stop looking back at our experience and saying, man, I remember when we were in Iraq and man, what a difference we made, or in the unit that I commanded, wow, what an amazing experience that was. When we stop looking backward, and then we have the ability and the peace of mind where we can look forward and say, hey, wait a minute, I can still serve my country. I can still serve my community. And community is a core component of that. And so I would also add that, based off of our research of perception, when we think about the American public viewing veterans as broken, did you know that actually the veteran population and community is more likely to think that they're broken than their civilian counterparts? And so it's sort of a two-pronged approach here. It's not just educating members of Congress and our community leaders and those who haven't served, but it's also reminding ourselves that, listen, you're not broken. It's okay. It's okay. And I think last year I made the example to dental care, but I don't want to call it my other sister. I have a couple other sisters. I won't say which one hasn't been to the dentist in a while. But she visited recently, and so I got to go to the dentist. I'm like, you got to go to the dentist. Why aren't you going to the dentist? We were raised, you go to the dentist every 6 months or every 12 months, depending on your insurance, right? We've got to get back, right? Yeah, we've got to get back to that, and we've got to really hit that home on the mental health piece. Listen, when was the last time you did a check-in, right? When was the last time you saw a professional? That's a cultural, community-based approach that we can really promote. And then, we can also know the 5 signs, right? And I know John's passing around these cards, and Barbara's really been integral in knowing the 5 signs. But we have an obligation to our own family members in our own community when they're not doing well to check in. I mean, my father had a stroke, he's okay, but he had a stroke about 1.5 years ago. I knew the signs, well, not all of them, but I knew enough to say, hey, Dad, I think you're having a stroke. We need to call 911, and we got him care. It's the exact same. We've got to take the exact same approach, and that's something we can all do. And again, there's not a huge policy component that a member of Congress can say, hey, this is the golden nugget. This is how we're going to fix VA, or this is how we're going to do that. But you know what? Back to Barbara's point about VA, the VA is even focusing on community like never before, and they're standing up over 100 community engagement, and they're not even standing up, I should say. They're integrating with community providers that are already out there. Secretary Bob knows the importance of strategic partnerships. It's one of his core focuses. So, I mean, there's a lot of activity right now, and for us, bringing home the community component is really, really critical, and frankly, it's something very few people talk about. So push that to your members of Congress and let them know, hey, listen, there's something you can do about this. There's something all we can do about this at a community level. And really, that's, for us, what it's really, really all about. And look no further than this panel, because we all are part of a community where we love and we support each other. And that's really what we should all be working for. So again, thanks, and I'm going to turn it back over to my community battle buddy, who's doing a great job moderating the panel. Bruce.
Thank you, excellent response. So let's turn to Jackie now. What distinguishes this era of veterans from previous generations, and why do programs that have worked historically need to change to be able to reach out to that era of veterans?
Well, I'm glad we're going to start out with an easy question. First off, I want to thank John and Bob for having me here, and it's such a privilege to be on the panel with so many of my partners here. So thank you so much. There are a couple of levels we can look at this when we're looking at the post-9/11 generation of veterans and how are they different. One level, if you compare to the Vietnam era generation, the post-9/11 generation, they're getting welcomed back with open arms. And honestly, the Vietnam veterans are the ones leading that charge. And so with that, there's this flow of support and the surge of support in the community to want to help. One of the challenges with that is there's so much out there. There are thousands of programs out there that are really oriented towards helping post-9/11 veterans and veterans in general. And so navigating that and also figuring out which are the programs that really are going to have that outcome that an individual wants can be really challenging. On another level, when we look at individuals, when we look at the face of modern medicine, there have been so many advances in the last decades in modern medicine, and so we've been at war for 15-plus years, 15-ish years, and we have individuals who are surviving wounds that they never would have in prior wars. And it's thought that that's in part of the reason that we do see suicide as a larger cause of death among this population, because we have individuals who are coming back and surviving traumatic injuries, and really then we need those support programs to help them and their families reintegrate, to get that employment, to really help them get back into civilian life. One of the other challenges with that is, as we think about these wars winding down, in decades to come, these individuals who have these most traumatic injuries are going to still need support. And the attention's already waning. And so to be able to focus our attention and to continue to say, hey, we've got a population here that needs our support, and oh, by the way, we don't really know what that support need is going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years. That's really challenging. The other point I like to make is this is a generation of technology. And so we see a lot of apps that are being developed. PTSD Coach is one of them. Apps that are being developed to try and help support, particularly in mental health needs, which is fantastic. But again, it comes back to being able to assess the programs, whether it's technology-based or not, being able to assess those and see which are really having that impact that becomes so challenging. But enabling this generation with those technology solutions is going to be critical. The final point that I want to make is often when we talk about the post-9/11 generation, we think about combat veterans and combat veterans that are struggling with mental health and suicide as a result of their combat experience. And the data has shown us that that is a false conclusion. There's a population out there that is never deployed that are also struggling with these challenges. And so the complexity of understanding what's driving that population, how do we support them, are they different from those who have served in combat or not? Those are all things we're still trying to understand, which makes this a lot more challenging as well.
So there's our first round of questions, and you can now see why I've relied so heavily on all these people to educate and inform me, because they are undoubtedly the brain trust of these issues across the board.
I want to just underscore, given that this is a conversation, sorry,
Please.
Bruce, if it's okay. One of the things that Jackie just said is so important, and Bill and I have talked about this, we've all talked about this, that, people often make the assumption that whatever the mental health challenge is that that particular veteran has is because of his or her service, but they're people first, they're humans first. They come into the service with whatever they were born with in terms of predisposition, family history, whatever trauma happened to them along the way, whatever challenges, whatever support or lack of support. And that is such a critical piece of this conversation because, as Bill said, we have gotten into this really unfortunate pattern and habit of, mental health veterans, that those somehow are connected, and it's mental health, it should be mental health people. And then veterans, like certain other classes of our folks, like first responders, are at a higher risk because of the stress and strain, whether they deploy or not. Military service is stressful. So I just want to, that's a great, really important point for all of you, because again, as you're out there talking to congressmen and senators and their staffers, it's the mental health, it's about mental health in general. It's about those issues, and then specifically, how do we make sure we take care of certain groups that are at higher risk? Sorry.
Well, and just to piggyback off
See
that,
what I started? This is good.
This is why that's important, because this is what you risk, right? If there's a narrative that says, okay, suicide, mental health issues, combat experience, right? Well, then the next step is, we just reduce combat operations and, suicide, mental health, it'll get better, right? Well, that's not true. So back to Caitlin's point earlier, the majority of the veterans who are dying by suicide today, right now, are those of an older generation, the Vietnam era generation. And oh, by the way, the largest group of those aren't individuals who are combat veterans. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah, see, I read you guys' reports.
I know, thanks.
And so that's really, really important to understand. And then that reinforces Barbara's point that this is a societal problem that we're facing here. It's not as simple as, combat is bad. Now I have mental health issues. Let's just eliminate it's not that simple. And so that's why it's so critically important that we realize that, because lawmakers, they simplify it. They say, here's the problem. Well, it's not that simple, right? The most are older veterans, not combat related. And so again, back to it's a societal problem.
And from my perspective, what makes it so challenging is for many of those different problems, the treatment is different. And so while PTS may look the same, combat-related PTS is very different from sexual trauma PTS. And the treatment and outreach program that's required to pull those people in. And so by overgeneralizing, you marginalize and disenfranchise part of the population. Well, I didn't deploy, so I really shouldn't go to VA. I'm having these issues. Well, no, there's service-related issues, and you should go to the VA, and they have proven clinical therapies to help you with those issues, be it the substance abuse, be it depression, be it PTS, be it sexual trauma PTS, right? So they're all very different, and you risk losing the people that you're trying to reach out to in overgeneralizing those populations.
And we continue to talk about these things, and it's habit. We refer to them as problems. And I mean, one of the things and John gave me my prop, so here I'm going to use it. So this is Campaign to Change Direction. These are some of our champions: First Lady Michelle Obama, Prince Harry, Dr. Biden. This is about changing the culture of mental health. So rather than saying these are issues, these are problems, these are part of being people. There's no one in here, and I'm not talking about the suicide element of your experience, which I assume brought all of you here, if not all of you, most of you. have been touched by suicide. But separate from that, we've all had mental health challenges touching us in our lives. Because it's part of being human. You can't be a human without it. So as soon as we can get to the point like dental care, Bruce Springsteen, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Anyway, he said one time that, which I loved, he said, it's like taking my car into the garage for a tune-up. Right. If I take my car in, shouldn't I take myself in? Well, we should. So if we could get that shift, and all of you, obviously, are the powerhouse because you're here, you're advocates, you care. Once we shift so that culture is about wellness and well-being and health, and mental health is part of that, we'll get away from that unfortunate tendency we have to go, oops, suicide, military, that's what they go through because of their service.
You were going to say?
Well, yeah, and just to piggyback on what everybody is saying, I think that one thing that, and thank you, Bill, for bringing that up, and Jackie too, is that what we know is that the majority of veterans who die by suicide have never been deployed, and the majority of service members who have died by suicide have never been deployed. And how many times do we hear what you said, Bruce? I was in a cab somewhere in the South at about a year ago, and I was talking with this guy, and I was like, oh, I see, that you served, you had something on. He's like, yeah, but I'm not a veteran. I said, what do you mean you're not a veteran? He's like, well, I never deployed, all my buddies deployed, but, I don't deserve VA care. I don't deserve to go in for care. And I said, wait a second, buddy. I'm not just saying this because I work for the VA, but you absolutely deserve that care. And then thinking about what you said, Bill, about just that, why is it perhaps that that veterans who have deployed maybe have more of a support network or have more protective factors like the mission, like that being constantly surrounded by your buddies, by your friends. And so it's also thinking about what veteran means, knowing and ensuring that people that people who served get the help that they deserve and they need, making sure that we're asking questions when we're providing care to anybody. Have you ever served in the military? So that you are then aware of anything that might come up related to that. So it's again, it's complicated, but I think that we're all thinking in very similar ways.
And if I can jump on Caitlin's point, that point that you just raised, this idea of even just asking that military history question, it's not done right now. Mm-mm. So if you go to your primary care doctor, on that little check sheet that they go through, the nurse goes through, there is not a question, have you ever served? Or are you related to someone who has served? That's also an important question, because we know that our military families also go through their own set of struggles and their own set of challenges that they're working through. And so to have a population that's going into the community, and we know that veterans are going into the community, and to not be able to identify them, that's information that is really, that's gonna help a clinician in kind of going through their diagnosis and their exam. But the other side of that is also ensuring that that clinician has the tools to understand if that individual says, yes, I've served, or yes, I'm part of a military family, that clinician then knows how that should guide the conversation. And that's also a big gap right now.
Yeah, so let me talk about the gap. Great lead-in. The stigma. So most people in the room have heard of stigma. And what we find is stigma can be very detrimental to life, because people they don't want to seem weak, they don't want to seem like they have a character flaw. One of the things you'll find to get care is by talking to a peer first. So what we find is when people call the line, first off, it's tough to call. When somebody calls Vets for Warriors, it wasn't easy for them to pick up the phone or get on that computer and do a live chat, because it's hard to reach out and make that first step to contact somebody. But it's amazing how fast, and even our clinicians, remember we have clinicians on the floor 24 hours a day. So there's always somebody there, and they help work with the training of us all the time. We're always doing trainings. But stigma's tough. So we make sure our peers know when you come to work in the day, you check your stigma at the door if you have any. We're here to help, not judge. Because the idea is no matter what you're calling about, no matter what you're going through, it's important, and we're here to listen. We're not here to solve your problems. We're here to work with you, to connect you to people, to talk to whatever you need to help you continue to thrive. So I think it's important that we understand peers and how they work. And our peers, they lead with, you served or you're serving, I served. So there's a commonality, right? A shared lived experience between you and the person that's calling. Family members can call too, because oftentimes not only they're worried about their loved one, but oftentimes they have struggles too. That's a challenging time. So please know that stigma is really important, that we've got to eliminate the stigma. We've got to make, it's got to be the right answer. Every door you go through needs to be the right door. And we've got to, when you ask the question about stigma, people always look at you and say, well, what is stigma? Think about breast cancer. The cultural stigma about seeking care early, people never talked about it. It's gone now pretty much. So we can do this. America can do this. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But we got to keep working on the stigma. We got to talk. Peers can help. We had a senior clinician who'd been a clinician for 40 years. She just retired. She said that callers tell us a peer more than in one phone call than they will a clinician in 3 or 4 sessions oftentimes, because they trust them. There's an immediate connection. So we help connect them back and to get them into care. Our goal is to get them into care so that they can get the help that they need.
And if I can piggyback off of that, so one of my roles at IAVA is to survey our members every year about really the successes and challenges that they're facing in their lives. And one of the things that I think I'm most proud of with the post 9/11 generation and with our members particularly is over the last 2 years that I've done the survey, I've actually seen stigma playing less of a role in mental health, and our members more willing to go seek help. So in our most recent survey, over 80% of our members who responded who felt they had a mental health issue, they went and sought help, which I'm just so proud of. But the other thing is, peers are absolutely an important part of this. So are family members, so is the community at large. So one of the other questions we ask is, did you have someone you love, so a friend, a family member, recommend that you seek help, and if so, did you? And 3 out of 4 said yes. They went and sought help because someone in their support network suggested that they do it.
So surveys within the military indicate that stigma still is a problem. And in one of the assessments that they've been doing in Afghanistan, they found that people who test positive for anxiety or depression, perception of stigma is much greater than people who don't test positive for those things, which basically means that the people who most need help are the least likely to seek help because of how they view their peers and supervisors are going to look at them for having sought that care, right? Which is a great dilemma.
Well, and it again, through the Campaign to Change Direction, it's not an anti-stigma campaign because stigma has a stigma. It's really sad, but it's true. And as soon as you start talking about stigma, people will start to shut down. And so our goal, obviously, is to change the culture, which will mean there won't be a stigma. But we don't use that word because what we know from the research around breast cancer, it wasn't that people went around saying, you shouldn't be afraid to talk about breast cancer. That's not what did it. What did it was all that pink. What did it was people stepping up and talking about, I had breast cancer, here's what happened, here was how I recovered, here's what was helpful to me. And so as you're talking on the Hill, the goal of the work that we're doing and others is not about talking more about we should get rid of the stigma, but it's about focusing on the commonality, focusing on how we're all alike, focusing on what's available, what helps, what works, the partnerships, so that those issues that prevent, and stigma, when people ask, well, what is stigma? Stigma is either what I'm afraid you all think, or what I think. Both sides of that keep me from getting help, keep me from saying whatever is true about myself. The other thing that we're doing is we're encouraging all of us that work in this space, and you all do this, I think, quite a lot. I know AFSP does this a tremendous amount. Share your stories. As a mental health professional, as a psychologist, I didn't talk about the fact that my mom is schizophrenic. For 43 years, I never saw her. She got lost in the system. I didn't talk about that. My husband, who lost his father to suicide, he didn't talk about that. He's a psychologist. So the more we make it part of us, the intended consequence of getting rid of stigma happens naturally, and it's much more effective than if you use that word, because unfortunately, people shut down.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I mean, your personal story is beyond powerful, and talking about it is equally important. Talking about the facts. Arm yourself with the facts. I mean, in the military, we can, use that study, for example. I mean, in the military, you're all about standards. You have to meet certain standards. And if someone's not meeting the standard, you have to correct them, or you set a new standard, which is a lower standard. And so if you hear someone talking about these issues and they're misinformed or ill-informed, correct them. Correct them. And so, you talk about what Mark's doing with his team and the amazing peer-to-peer support that you all provide, and I know how amazing it is. Tell that story. And then talk about the importance of peers and talk about how it's okay, right? And it's really, really critically important, because when we talk about perception shift and we talk about stigma, here's the thing. We're not doing this by ourselves. There are other people saying and doing things. And I hate to say it, but there are other people saying and doing things that aren't helpful. They're harmful. Mm-hmm. And so, not that they're malicious, some might be, but I don't think they are. But we have to educate them too. It's not just our leaders up on the hill, or other individuals who are trying to be helpful don't know the information. So, and I admit I used to be part of it, right? I was misinformed. I still am, probably, to a degree. I have to read more of Caitlin's reports. So, when you talk about 22 veterans dying by suicide every day, 22 veterans, okay, well, hold on. They're not all post 9/11 veterans, right? Most are over 50. Most haven't deployed. I mean, you start to talk about that a little bit. Oh, by the way, did you know there are 117 Americans who died by suicide every day? Where'd you get that number? AFSP's website, right? Have those conversations, and they're tough, but they're essential. They're absolutely essential, because if we don't educate ourselves, we're not going to make any progress on this whatsoever. So that's a really key component.
Bill, can you quickly talk about your the push-up challenge that you all did? It was just so fantastic.
Okay,
Well,
so
let's ask if anyone here has heard of or has participated in the push-up challenge.
the 22-day push-up challenge. All right, so you guys are great. I love you guys.
Yep.
All right, so I don't like the 22 push-up day challenge, not just because I don't like doing push-ups, but I don't. That's why I'm not in the Army anymore, right? Okay. That's the only reason. But so I had a lot of friends who were doing the 22-day, like close friends, and they were rocking it out. I'm like, this is awesome. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is this? And there's no right or wrong answer here, but are we further amplifying the idea that it's a veteran problem, not a societal problem? Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking, like, everybody means well, so there's nobody's doing anything wrong. But like, what's something else we could do to kind of, like play off of that? So I have an amazing staff who are great, and so I recommended to them that maybe we all collectively do 117 push-ups. And again, they're great staff. I recommended, I didn't force them to do push-ups. But so we collectively did 117 push-ups to try and raise awareness of that, and we sped it up, right? Because 117 takes a while. But it was a really, really cool thing that we did, and it was positive, right? So it wasn't negating anyone's effort that's meaningful and trying to be helpful. But then again, it started a whole conversation, and even on our social, as we posted it, people were like, "Where are you getting 117?" Like AFSP's website, like, "Oh, wait a minute, what about this?" And it was a really cool way to have a conversation, right? To just educate and inform folks. And so that's one of the things we try to do day in and day out, because ultimately, when we transition back to communities across the country. And then, oh, by the way, here's the really exciting part, because there is an opportunity here. Based off of our research, the Veteran Civic Health Index, we know veterans are more likely to volunteer, to vote, to know their neighbor. So there's a real opportunity here as we talk about these things, saying, hey, who better to help other people with their mental health, right? Other people who are going through difficult times. So there's an upside to that as well. And so again, just trying to be creative in ways we can have conversations. And go check out, I mean, you don't have to, don't criticize my push-up form, but yeah, go to, the Got Your Six Facebook page and Twitter, and it's up there. And, again, it's just one of those ways, how can we have a broader conversation? And for everybody who did 22 push-ups today, you're better than I am, because like I said, I didn't do 22. We like did 117 divided by like 10. I only did like 17, so you guys won.
So before we start taking questions, I see people are turning in questions. We'll get to as many of those as we can. Barbara, you talked about how the climate has changed between the VA and organizations, and that collaboration is much, much better than it was 10, 12 years ago. How did that happen? What's happening at the local level to help break those walls down between the private and public sector?
Well, Bill mentioned connection, and Mark, and I mean, we've all been talking about, relationships, peers and members and organizations, and it's the relationships. And it was a lot of hard work by a lot of people who, we all grow up in our silos. We all grow up in whatever the biases that we have. And hopefully, as we grow and evolve and we keep conversations fresh and we listen and we think differently, there were enough people at the VA who started to say, maybe we don't have to do it all alone. Maybe it is a good idea. And actually, it was also DOD that started to open the doors. And so it's very exciting to look back and see how much progress we've made. And it was really those folks who saw there's more power by working together and collaborating that kept pushing, pushing, pushing. And then the leadership that came in to support it. And that's really where we are today.
And that desire, and that unwillingness to take no for the first answer.
Yes.
Because in a bureaucracy,
You get a lot of no's.
no is always the easiest
Yes.
answer
Yes.
in the beginning.
Absolutely.
So that persistence to push through.
If I can add one thing to that, Barbara, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a grassroots movement happening right now. You all are a part of it. I've seen this happening in the veteran space, just locally, these veteran collaboratives that are popping up, which are organizations that are serving veterans and their family members that are starting to actually talk to each other, get to know one another in their local communities. Boston has one. I believe there's one in LA. There are a couple others that are popping up, and it's a fantastic initiative, because what we see happening, and when you talk to these local leaders on the ground, they're saying, well, I would have these veterans coming to me with this issue, and we don't deal with that, and I didn't know where to send them, and now I do. And so to have those initiatives and to have that collaboration at the local level, which is now going to expand into a regional level and a state level, and that's really, you have multiple levels of supports, right? You've got the local, the regional, the state, the federal, and all of these pieces, there's so much going on, it's often hard to coordinate them. But that grassroots initiative, that's going to be the springboard to helping coordinate all of those additional levels, and it's happening.
Yeah, and Jack, organizations are people, and so to answer your question, I think one of the biggest changes at VA is Bob McDonald. And so he's changing the culture from no to yes. He's including veterans, military groups, family groups at an unprecedented scale. So that is a huge part of the culture shift at VA and in bringing in other groups. And they certainly have additional challenges, but I can tell you from where I sit, their ability to be inclusive and to bring in new organizations is just unprecedented. And so that would be my quick answer to that. And I think I'm in trouble with John. Are you going to?
And just quickly from VA's perspective, and we are working that now. Like those of us who are within VA are so thrilled about this. We had a call to action in February that really brought together some of the people sitting here. But we are open to that. We are more and more open to that. I certainly, in suicide prevention, am hiring, bringing on somebody whose sole job is going to be working these strategic partnerships. And we also, I hope you'll be talking about this at some point, John, but with AFSP, we had an unprecedented lethal means conference in California. Ryan is somewhere who helped to oversee that. Christine was so involved in that. And it was extraordinary, and we're really looking forward to making that more of a national conference, and so we'll be talking soon.
One of the things that just to throw in, one of the things I constantly say, the VA can't do this alone, nor should they. And so we have this this wonderful environment right now where we've got a leader in the VA who knows that. We've got a community who's ready to roll up their sleeves and support. And so it really is an exciting time.
Okay, and I'll throw in one thing, just because I haven't talked in a while.
Are
So
you
I won't
like
say-
Ronald Reagan? I pay for this microphone and I'm going to speak?
I won't use the S word.
Mr. Green?
So I won't use the S word. But I think one of the key things we haven't mentioned is transitions. And transitions are more than just leaving the military. Even when you're still in the military, you're transitioning. But when you're a veteran, you're transitioning. I think one of the things that strikes me about today's world, now that I'm in the civilian world, is how many people move around from company to company. Or they do contracts here and there. Transitions are challenging for folks. So that's one of the things I think you'll find is all the peers at Vets for Warriors have transitioned. They've left the military, they've some gone to school, some done other things, they land where we are. So I think it's important to let people know there's a place you can call and talk to someone else who's transitioned, who's gone through some transitions, who understands what you're going through. And a lot of times it's not something big, but they don't talk to anybody about it and it can become big. So the idea is let's talk early. Let's connect early. And then we'll call you back and check to see how things are going to find out. So I think transitions is something really important that we need to make sure we keep our eye on the ball, because transitions is not just when you leave the military, it happens throughout your life. I mean, it really does.
Okay, well, this is fantastic. Obviously, again, you can see why we put this panel together. There are so many questions here that are all applicable to what our panelists have talked about. So I think the first one, Barbara probably can answer it first, because I think it talks to her notion of whole health. What can we do to help young people and their families entering military service to prepare for possible mental health challenges ahead?
Wow, that's a great question. And that really does go to the whole, we need to educate way early, like preschool. Let's start in preschool. I'm serious, and thank you. Children are amazing in their ability to understand language. So why don't we teach them emotional language? Why don't we make sure that these kids, so these cards that you all have now, this is the Change Direction, which we are so proud that AFSP has its very cool lifesaver on there that goes with that. So we want these in every school, on every refrigerator, because if our children understand themselves, if they understand their tendencies, if they understand their triggers, because we all have those too, if they understand their temperaments, if they understand their family predispositions, their histories, before they go into the military, then they're equipped. They're well equipped. And so if something happens and they go, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad, you know what's starting to happen? I'm starting to get really anxious, or I'm starting to feel, remember when I used to get really depressed, or you know what, I've noticed I'm not eating the way I should. All those things are just the same as, oh, you know what, I have a sprained back muscle, or my teeth are hurting. If we teach our kids early the language, and we're not afraid to use that language about ourselves, if we model. Here's a good example. Last night, my husband, we have a 15-year-old, and she's grown up with this language, and she does it bidirectionally. So last night, she was working. She's a lifeguard. Isn't that cool? She's a lifeguard. Anyway, she, in more ways than one. And she came home, and my husband and I, my husband's a psychologist, we were both very, very distraught about the shootings in Orlando, and our organization is responding by offering free care. So we were sad, and we hadn't talked with her about it. So I said, honey, did you hear what happened? And she said, oh my God. And she said, is that why you're so quiet? Is that why you seem withdrawn? Bingo. Good for her that she saw it, and then she connected the dots and asked me, and I said, yes, honey, we're pretty sad tonight. That's what we need to do for our kids.
Okay. And Barbara and team, just so you know, tomorrow we're handing out postcards that says be a lifesaver, and we're handing out rolls
Yay.
of lifesavers. All right, so this is probably for Mark and Bill and potentially Jackie and Barbara.
Caitlin.
What about me?
I'm a first-timer here. I'm also a veteran, but I've never heard about Vets for Warriors or Got Your Six. How are you getting the word out to veterans about who you are and who might be seeking help? Are you distributing flyers or brochures on bases for departing service members and Guard and Reserve units? Mark, I think you touched on this. Your challenge.
I did. Great question. That is a challenge. There's 40,000 veteran nonprofits, I think, right? Yeah. So pick one, right? So that's part of the challenge, and that's what we're with Vets for Warriors. We're struggling getting the word out, actually. And you would think in this day and age of social media, why is it so hard? And as I mentioned, because those that are contacting us aren't the ones telling others because they call because it's confidential. And that's what's one of the main reasons they call. They'll ask us when they call, are you recording this call? They want to make sure that they know up front. 40% of our active duty callers never give us their rank. I had a guy call one time, and I'll never forget, and I asked him if I could use this. He said, I'm going to talk to someone I don't know and I'm never going to meet. Think about that. That's the guy on the airplane you meet, and you're never going to see him again, right? And you have a conversation and you never see the guy again. So you can help us get the word out. We're trying. We've got a public service announcement getting ready to come out with a Medal of Honor recipient from Vietnam, Colonel Jack Jacobs, who's going to try to help us get the word out about Vets for Warriors, because we want people to know they can call 24 hours a day when they need to call. Not when it's good for us, but when it's good for them, or when it's a challenging time for them, they can call. So we can then connect them and help get them into care. Sometimes it's not just getting them into care, it's helping them help them make the care that they're in better, because they understand. I'll give you a quick example, a little off topic there, but I got a call from someone one time who had a therapist, who's seen a psychiatrist, but it wasn't going good because they weren't military, they weren't veterans, so they didn't understand. Well, the person this caller happened to talk to was another Marine, and the Marine veteran said, don't do like me. Don't wait for years to get help, and your marriage falls apart and your kids aren't talking to you. Get help now. And he said, you just told me all these things that are going on in your life. Have you told your therapist or your psychiatrist this? Well, no, they wouldn't understand. He goes, but they're professionals. They can't help you unless you open up. So he was able to help her work through that. And they talked, he called her back and checked on, she's doing a lot better. She said, you're right, I opened up and told them, and gosh, they really are good. And so it was good already, but it was even better. So we need you to help get the word out. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on all those social media where you all young people know what they are. I can't pronounce them. But it is a challenge, and we're working hard at getting the word out better. So you can help us by doing that. And to me, the best way to get the word out is by people telling other people.
Yeah, I would just add, people telling other people, and not just about what you do, right? About what other people are doing. And so we believe in collective impact at Got Your Six. We have an amazing coalition that Give an Hour and so many others are in. And so, we tell people as sort of broad and as far and as wide as we can about us, but we equally, frankly, tell them about everyone else. And so, Vets for Warriors, Mark wasn't kidding. He has a ton of swag, because I've got it all in my office and I give it out to people when they come in. I'm like, here's a coaster, here's this. You got to tell everybody about everything. And if you think about it in the military, for that veteran who asked the question, it was one team, one fight, right? You didn't force somebody to, hey, this is what you got to do. Different things work for different people. And so think about other organizations. Team Red, White, and Blue is an organization I volunteer with to this day. They help me out a lot. They provide a sense of community. Team Rubicon, again, Give an Hour, TAPS, IAVA, right? So there are all of these options. Go find out what works well for you, and then tell as many people as you can. Because here's the other component I just want to add. Getting the word out is important. Working digitally is critical, but there is no substitute for a genuine, trusted relationship. There's no substitute for that, all right? Social media and technology can amplify that, but there's no substitute for that. So that's the other piece. Tell the people who you love and trust about the organization that made an impact in your life, and you're doing your part.
Well, I think it's fair to say that while we're all here to go to the Hill tomorrow, the other part of the reason we put this panel together was to expose all of you to these organizations, so as you go home and work with your chapters, we can make sure you get the connections to all of these groups, and you can figure out what you can do as boots on the ground in our movement to assist all these groups. Like Barbara is moving from the national level. She's just started something in New Hampshire, so Lisa Riley's going to be involved with that. She's going to Ohio, so our Ohio folks are over here. They're going to talk to Barbara on the way out. So I think all of us can figure out, again, back to one of Bruce's first questions, this is not just a government problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
this is,
sorry, with that, John. Does anybody here know who your local VA suicide prevention coordinator is? Good. So a few of you do. So those are other connections that you can make locally with your VA, are your suicide prevention coordinators. All of those are found on our resource locator on veteranscrisisline.net, or you can just email me and I'll set you up. But get outreach events going. I know so many of our suicide prevention coordinators do the Out of the Darkness walk, which is amazing. You're amazing in hosting that. But another way to connect with VA.
And when you go to the Hill tomorrow, please ask offices, do you know about Given Hour? Do you know about? Because they hear from a lot of their constituents with these kinds of issues. And they're in a great position to make those referrals to say, hey, we're going to hook you up with the VA, but let's also start with the crisis line here, the Vets for Warriors. Let's talk about what's going on in your community with Red, White, and Blue or Got Your Six, right? IAVA's outreach activities. If those offices don't know about it, then they can't help their communities understand and integrate better.
agreed. So I'm going to sort of combine three questions because they're all sort of related. Kate, the first one might go to Caitlin, but then there's the military. If someone seeks out mental health care, Caitlin, at the VA, is it confidential? And then someone says, my husband is in the military with a security clearance. He was told that if he seeks mental health services, he'll lose that clearance. How can we change that policy? And then last but not least, in light of the idea of the connection, how do we support National Guard troops who often do not experience that sense of belonging and community except for one weekend a month? So
Can I just, and I'll just be quiet then after that. But the National Guard question, so Given Hour has an MOU with the National Guard and the Reserve component. So we are there. We are working with the Guard and the Reserve, building state by state by state. So anything anyone needs, Guard and Reserve mental health, we're partnering with them. Thank goodness, and the DOD did that. So that's that piece, sorry.
For the security clearance question, they've removed that from the security clearance questionnaire now. If you seek treatment for deployment-related, relationship failure, and one other category, if you seek therapy for that, you do not have to report that as part of your security clearance questionnaire. I have a top secret compartmentalized security clearance in my job. They don't ask that question anymore. What gets you into problem is ignoring it and not getting treatment, and the resulting behavioral issues, the DWIs that come from the self-medication. You'll lose your security clearance much quicker if that happens to you, or if you lie about having sought therapy for another reason. If you're honest and you tell them, 99.8% of all security clearances are approved and no problem.
I think you answered the questions.
Thank you.
So I commanded a detachment in the Army Reserves, and that's one of the daggone hardest things to handle. And I had troopers, I had soldiers who had challenges, and who were using coping mechanisms, frankly, to deal with some of these challenges. And it was one of the toughest challenges I've ever had in my life as a leader, because people are dispersed throughout a large geographical area. I have limited command and control myself. I don't see and touch those people every day. That is a real challenge. And I'll tell you, this is what better example for us having an all-hands approach, because it literally took everybody. It took the VA, where I had to send some of these individuals to get assessments and treatments. This was up in New York, so we sent some folks up to West Point, the hospital there. It took mental health experts in New York City. It took everybody. It took nonprofits. But this is the community component that's critical. It's tiring. It is really tough, but you can't give up. You got to make that extra phone call. You got to do that extra visit. And so that's one of the toughest things. And listen, the Guard's doing great work. Community Joining Forces is a great initiative that they've got going on. But that question is one of the toughest questions that we've got to answer as a society. And again, what better challenge to highlight the fact that these are combined challenges. So you know what, Barbara? Your daughter who's, knows all these amazing things, and wow, that's great to set her up for the military. It's great to set her up in life.
Absolutely.
And so it's the same thing on the Reserve Guard component. If we can think about how we tackle that, it's got to be the same way we would tackle anything.
And to add to that, so we've mentioned a few organizations, Team Red, White, and Blue, and Rubicon, IAVA, that have these grassroots organization or grassroots components, so that we have groups on the ground in the communities who are meeting, getting veterans together, getting civilians and veterans together. And I shouldn't leave out, there's the VFW and the Legion. I mean, all of these groups are working together to provide those community supports, so that if you are particularly in that reserve component coming home and you've lost that unit support, you have a community ready to receive you.
Yeah, one of the things I'll mention too, I met with General Grass and some senior leaders in the National Guard last week, and I've known him for a long time. So one of the challenges is, the number one reason people call us is isolation. Yeah. They're feeling isolated. And of course, I commanded a Guard Brigade while I was on active duty, which was another interesting experience in California. So getting the word out, the question of getting the word out is another challenge. General Grass was kind of shocked that everybody didn't know about Vets for Warriors, because he didn't really know much about it either. So they're going to work to do that. We refer people to Give an Hour. I mean, they're one of our number one referral sources, and the VA. We send them both places. But we also connect them to all these other organizations. My son-in-law works for Team Red, White, and Blue. And of course, Bill and I are great friends. So we connect people to all kinds of organizations. So I think that the key is those places that are isolated, getting the word out to them so they know. You can get on a computer and talk to a peer. You can call, and then we'll help connect you to those organizations. We'll help connect you to community-based care and organizations, whether it's the VA, Give an Hour, Got Your Six, IAVA, whatever organization it is. There's a lot of them out there, and there's some programs now are starting up to where they're hubs in different communities where you plug them in, and then they locally connect you to organizations. So I think, as Barbara mentioned earlier, it's getting better and better. We just got to keep it going, and you all can be a big part of that.
All right, two things. We've got to end, unfortunately. I would urge all of these extraordinary organizations have websites. You can sign up. You can get their e-newsletters. Caitlin made a very good point. If you don't know who your local VA person is, find out. Make an appointment to go see them. The other comment, wouldn't it be nice if the media, whether it's TV, radio, or television and social media, would cover these extraordinary people and what their organizations do? I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, no doubt, but I wish the media would spend more time connecting the dots and letting people know what's right, so that maybe less bad things would go on. So thank you all. You're extraordinary Americans. Thank you.